including insecurity, armed banditry, kidnappings, and armed herders farmers crisis. Climate change impact as seen in rising incidents and frequency of floods, escalating inflation, and rising agricultural and food commodity prices. This continuing depreciation in the value of the naira and the removal of subsidy have been the main twin devils driving the economic crisis in our hands. We are aware that the government has introduced various measures on food crisis, including the declaration of a state of emergency on food insecurity, launching of the National Agricultural Extension Policy, release of fertilizers and grains to farmers, and similar measures. We urge the government to sustain the intervention policies introduced recently to tackle this situation. We support the declaration of a state of emergency in the food sector last July and urge government to implement a comprehensive intervention plan, primarily focusing on boosting food production, security of our farmlands, affordability and sustainability of the food supply chain. As key strategy and policy initiatives to address the current food price shock, we must increase food production through mechanization, improved distribution logistics, adequate access to fertilizers and improved seedlings, increased specialized agricultural financing, and reinforced supply chains. The CBN and other development finance institutions like the Bank of Agriculture, the Bank of Industry, must play a key role in increased financing for agricultural production and support for critical logistics and agricultural infrastructure upgrades. Additionally, government at all levels should increase the budgetary allocation to agriculture with close monitoring on budget implementation. Furthermore, investing in climate resilient agriculture will be vital to increasingly preserving future harvests. More intense and more unpredictable climate events are increasing contribution to food insecurity. We need to embrace sustainable farming systems, leverage more technology and modern agricultural practices, and engage more youth in agricultural production and the agricultural value chain. We urge the federal government to collaborate with state governments in addressing these challenges of insecurity to ensure effective implementation of agricultural intervention plans. Today, therefore, is a time of critical reflection on the uncertainties we confront on how we can address the country's food security needs. Once again, I would like to thank and welcome our panelists and moderator. I wish you all fruitful conversations, and thank you for listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, Mr. President, as usual, for that very brief, direct to the issues, usually your speeches at our event. Thank you so much, Mr. President. Once again, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will then now hand over our panelists to hand over this session to be coordinated by Africa Farmer. Africa Farmer is the, do I say founder or CEO of Agri Business Empowerment Initiative. Very committed Nigerian. When you see this man, his clothes is speaking farming. Everything about him is saying farming. His dress, you see him, Africa Farmer, his suit, everything about him. Please make welcome Africa Farmer Mogaji, Folu Mogaji, as he takes us further in this engagement.
Thank you. I want to say a big thank you to the president of the chamber for agreeing under very short notice. Also, I will acknowledge the Director General, who is ever dynamic and mobile. And also the chairman of Agri Group, Mr. Kola RivB. This will not happen without him, without the group, a dynamic group, and we'll be asking many of us to consider joining that group. Now, thank you. Just to set the foundation, we're all aware of the prices of food going up and continuing to increase, and with no end in view, really. A lot centered around the dollar conversation, and even things that don't have to do with dollar. You hear it's transportation and co. So this event today is very crucial to trying to give direction or guide to the policymakers, to individuals, to corporates who are looking at going into the agribusiness space. We're having unprecedented challenges coming in from all sectors across the value chain. And today, with the opportunity to leverage the virtual platform, I want to say a big thank you to the panelists, and I would kick off by asking all the panelists for one or two statements at first before we begin to dive deep into it. I would want to, let me start with Babajide, who is, when we start with data, I'm sure we'll be able to do well. One of the crucial things that the agri sector has not been working with, at least spanning over 20 years that I've been monitoring, is data. We have not been leveraging data, we've been gathering data. So Babajide, what's your take as regards the situation of Nigeria's food security?
Thank you, African Farmer. Thank you to the chairman and president hosting this discussion. Thank you to all the other, everyone that's logged on online, over 100 persons, invaluable, unmeasurable time. But let's jump into it. We all know Burna Boy. He has a popular song called Normal. He has a phrase that he says, normal, normal. The truth is, if we look at the data, everything that we're experiencing is expected. It's normal, normal. And what do I mean? To speak to the numbers and to try and put it in context for everyone to understand, Nigeria's agricultural sector is currently estimated in terms of size to be 53 trillion naira. That's the size of the agricultural sector, and that includes 4 subsectors. So when we talk about agriculture in Nigeria, it's really crop production, the fisheries, the livestock, and the forestry activities. But within these 4 sectors that I've mentioned that account for Nigeria's 53 trillion agricultural economic size, which is also called GDP, that crop production sector accounts for 90% of all agricultural sectors. So in simple terms, one way is to look at what has happened in the agricultural sector, which a lot of people like to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. But perhaps a more interesting way I like to look at it is to just focus on crop production, and that's because crop production accounts for 90% of economic output of Nigeria's agricultural sector. And so if you just really extensively focus on crop production, your inferences and your conclusions wouldn't be wrong. And so if we then hone in into crop production, something interesting stands out. And that's in 2019, Nigeria's crop production was growing at 2.5% per annum. And that number is easy to write down, 2.5% per annum annual growth of crop production. And in that year, all domestic and global agencies were worried that 2.5% annual crop production was significantly small for a country that is growing at an estimated of 3 to 3.2% net population growth. So in simple terms, as at 2019, our population growth, our net population was growing faster than our crop production. And so the alarms had really gone off in 2019. In 2022, in fact, after 2020, it got worse. So it moved from 2.5% in 2019 to 2.2% in 2020. And that was the same level in 2021. We now have the numbers, the full numbers for 2023. And the number shows that Nigeria currently crop production is growing at below 2% per annum. The worst in a long time. 2.5% as at 2019 was extremely bad. As at 2020, 2021, 2022, the numbers were 2%. As at 2023, the National Bureau of Statistics has released its recent reports that shows that Nigeria's crop production output is below 2%. And so that's the situation we found ourselves. We've been on this steady decline for over 5 years. It is normal, in Burna Boy's words. Our net population growth is significantly faster than our crop production output. And so it has increased the pressures on even imported food products, which also has increased the pressure on the means to import these products, food products, which clearly is the dollars, the pounds, and the yen. So everything that has happened is actually easy to connect. It is normal, and if not for the way it affects our lives and humanity, I would have said it's no cause for alarm. If we invest, you reap what you sow. And so over time, what is happening into Nigeria really is we are reaping what we have sown. And so it is expected, if we choose to sow in a different way, it is expected that we will reap in a different way. So like crop production and life, Nigeria has sown, and we are now in the time of harvest. And the results of this harvest is what we are getting.
Thank you, Jide. So I will just follow up on that. So I just want to find out, why do you think government mostly, or people in government, or people working with government don't use this data? Because many of these data comes from a Bureau of Statistics. Why don't they use this data to plan such that we can avert this crisis that we find at hand?
Now, there isn't just one reason why they don't use the data. We can look at a lot of reasons. So if anyone says that this is the reason, and that might not be correct. What I understand is there are lots of reasons. Some of these reasons are they do not understand how to use this data. One of the other reasons is there's no capacity to interpret and analyze this data. There are also possible reasons such as everybody passing the buck, who should be responsible for using this data and following up on this data. And overall, one of the things that I've seen and that I believe is among the top reasons why the data isn't being used is because there are no consequences of not using the data. Our performance management and performance reward systems at all levels isn't driven by data. And so the measurement of performance of the ministries, departments, and agencies are often not driven by how they use data to achieve growth within their offices.
Thank you, Jide. I'll come back to you. Architect Kabir, sir, you have been around corridors of power for quite a while. When I mean corridors of power, I mean within the food system. You were former president or immediate past president, Poultry Association of Nigeria. And so you, over the years, you've had interactions with different or successive ministers of agriculture. What do you think should change now if you happen to be the special advisor to the president? What will you be telling the president based on your experience?
Thank you very much, African farmer, my good friend.
Yes, sir.
I like the idea that you tell the whole world that I'm the immediate past president of poultry. No, I have been out of that presidency since 2012.
Wow.
But anyway, let me go straight to the issues you raised. Talking from the point of view of a special advisor to Nigeria's president in the circumstances, I would like to look at the issue of food security as more serious business than we are probably talking about now. To me, food security should be tackled from each of the 6 geopolitical zones, because we must identify what is staple in a zone, scale the productivity of the producers of that staple, and thereby satisfying the people who will eat what is staple in their places. So to begin with, I would implore the government to work with all the subnationals through concerted effort of getting everybody to have a buy-in in the policy guidelines to take Nigeria to a sustainable food system, get food sufficiency, and then get the desired food security. Now, if, for instance, the federal government decides to do special interventions in a few crops, and those crops are staple in only certain regions, not all regions of Nigeria, there will still be a gap. But if you incentivize the subnationals to key into a policy that involves doing those things that will enhance the scalability of what is staple in the individual geopolitical zones, the 6 geopolitical zones, then you will impact the people more. I.e., let me elaborate. Currently, there is an intervention from the Africa Development Bank that is promoting 4 crops: wheat, rice, maize, and cassava. Now, one would wonder what intervention would be on the other crops. Many years ago, I was a youth corper in the Southeast, particularly in Owerri. I trained as an architect, but as a corper, I was supposed to feed myself on 200 naira. And I was used to eating in restaurants back when I was in the university in Zaria. We had a famous restaurant they called Shagalum, and it's still there. I used to take, with 2 naira, I would get jollof rice and pepper soup. So when I went to the East, this was my mentality, that I could go and eat food. I didn't know how to cook. But I found that I needed to augment my income, and I needed to eat food that was available, not food that I was necessarily used to. Now, I'm saying this so that people will understand the perspective from which I'm talking. I remember one time I was very exhausted and coming from a meeting. And in that, around 1983, when I was in Owerri, the taxis were very few. So I found myself walking most of the way back home along what they used to call MCC Road. That MCC Road is, I used to live in Aladima Federal Housing. Along the way, there were restaurants, and one in particular was at the corner, and it was very popular. So I remember a few occasions I went there to look for food. I asked for food. They said, no, there was no food, but there was rice. No food, but there was rice. So in a way, at that time, rice was not food. So if there was a lot of rice in Owerri, the generality of the people did not think it was food. So I had to come to terms with what was food in Owerri. And what would be food security for me would be food that was available, affordable, and was supposed to be balanced nutritiously. So going from there, what I have learned is for every region or for every locality, there is what is a staple. If I need to fortify the staple to make it balanced nutritiously, I could intervene. But I could not possibly substitute that with any other thing because I could do it. So now the concept that we have in Nigeria, and this is not only this administration, it has been there over the years. The government policy would be, we would intervene in this way, and we would do it regardless. We are not necessarily doing it in consultation with the people. So if perchance I happen to advise President Tinubu, I would ask him, look at the issue of food security from the perspective of the 6 geopolitical zones and scale the productivity of those commodities that are staple in that region. I will restrict myself to what you put across to me. But you know what is very, very vital today now in Nigeria is the affordability of food. And you need to scale productivity to be able to make food available. You need to strengthen the purchasing power of the Naira to make people like African farmers be able to afford food and therefore have food security. So I will answer your questions as you ask them. But okay, on a general note, if I'm an advisor to the current president of Nigeria, I would ask him to look at the food system, okay, in 6 perspectives, yeah, tied to the 6 geopolitical zones.
Thank you. Your story you just shared just also made me remember when I was in my national diploma at the College of Agriculture, when I was processing Gary to cassava, and I ran out of cassava and I had to go to a place that was in Ondo State called Ileoluji, where they grow cocoa. They regard cassava farmers as lazy farmers. So they go and plant the cassava way inside so people will not see them. So if you say you are a cassava farmer, you are regarded as a lazy person. So you're saying that in trying to solve this food crisis, we should stop this one-size-fits-all approach. It should be regional, even not regionally, really at national level. The northeast, northwest, southwest, everybody votes regionally. Thank you. I'll come back to you. Thank you for the perspective. So I come to Ada. So Ada, you've been opportuned to be special advisor to Dr. Akinwumi Adesina. You're an entrepreneur. You've paid your dues both within and outside the country. So there's theory, there's practical. You've gone through both. If you happen to be the advisor, again, to advise the current Minister of Agriculture, because you've been in various strategy sessions, both in Nigeria and in Africa, what 3 things or what would you be communicating with him now when you look at their situation we're in?
Thank you, African Farmer, and thank you to the hosts at LCCI for this really pertinent conversation. Just confirming, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you for this very pertinent conversation. Indeed, Babajide and architect Ibrahim have really laid out some solid interventions already. And I'd just like to build on that. If I am supposed to be doing this sort of advisory today, and I think of maybe two or three top things. The first thing I would say is, let's just first of all admit that you need help. Admit that you need help to solve this issue, and get the right experts and people around you to do this. What I'm seeing right now looks like there are folks who are a bit clueless, unfortunately, don't have the in-depth understanding of what it takes to grow our productivity in the food space, to work with our farmers to ensure that they are increasing their yield, and to really understand what needs to be done. When we, during my time as a senior advisor, just everybody around us, they were experts, be it cassava genetists or somebody who has done all palm for years and understands it. These were the people around the table, many of them civil servants. So they are there, they exist. So bring them to the front and ensure that you are listening to what needs to be done. So I feel like that's the first thing. And it sort of has to be broad. It's not just about the individuals. I think architect Ibrahim touched on this. It's how do you ensure you're collaborating with the agencies that matter. For example, you take, be it NEMA or NIMET, the Meteorological Center. Why is it that we're still having floods that are washing away nearly 700,000 hectares of farmland, leaving our farmers with nothing after planting? So I remember when this was happening back in 2012, and the Minister of Agriculture at the time got these people around the table from these agencies to say, let's look at the meteorological data. So I hear the question you ask Babajide and say, it's not like the data is not there sometimes. Why isn't it used to plan? At the time, that minister was using it to plan so that we could avoid having a flood or not being prepared for a flood that would wash off our farmlands and all our crops and lead to food insecurity and high prices of food inflation, so that we could avoid it going forward. So you really truly have to have the people, the experts who understand this, who understand the importance of that, of planning. I think the second thing that I would focus on is around just the budget. And again, Architect Ibrahim did touch on this. You're hearing these numbers, less than 2% of our budget is being allocated, and that's consistently over the years to agriculture. And since 2012 or so, there was the CADEP framework where you have governments who signed up, including Nigeria, to commit 10% of their budget to agriculture. This has never been done, not even close. We literally just stay around that 2% level. I think it was when we had President Yaradua, God rest his soul, that we reached 5% or so of our budget being allocated to agriculture. Everybody understands the competing needs. The country needs good healthcare. The country needs better education. But if we cannot eat, if we cannot ensure that the 80% of the people who are responsible for the food that we eat every day are secure and have a living, what do we do? So I do believe the funding needs to be allocated, but broaden this in the thinking, broaden it to ensure that we bring security into play. People need to be safe on their farms. We know what is going on. People running away from the farms today because of insecurity. They don't feel safe. They don't know if someone is going to bring out an AK-47 from under their dress. They don't know if they're going to be kidnapped. Number of investors I spoke to during that time who I would pitch to, come and do cassava, we will give you this land, we will speak to the governor on your behalf, and they will bring millions and millions, sometimes in many cases dollars, to invest. set up their processing factory, start doing the farms, bring the best experts. And then you get a call and say, our farm manager was kidnapped and they're asking for ransom. And then when finally, thank God, you maybe get that person free, person doesn't want to work again. They want to take their family and be back to safety. So security needs to be front and center if we're really thinking about food security down the line. And African farmer, there's so much to say, but maybe something around the third thing maybe I would think of is ensuring that the Minister of Agriculture truly takes ownership of leading the charge to get us out of this rut we're in. I think there's stuff going on. I'm hearing his VP's office has agricultural transformation. Another agency has agriculture, is trying to do agriculture. President's office has advisors and advisors. What is going on? Let's be coordinated. Let's have a center, a war room, and somebody who is the leader to take ownership and drive this agenda forward. There have been, in the last 8 years, how many institutions, the Anchor Borrowers Program, Food Security Council, state of emergency for food. We can go on and on, NATIP, ATIP, all sorts of abbreviations, all on this food matter. And we're still here. And we're worse off. So I believe the leadership is crucial. And it's leadership that understands this issue and understands the gravity of it. That really is how we get out of this. So those are maybe 3 things I would quickly intervene. We're going to talk some more.
Yeah.
But I would very quickly, I would also throw in, if you would permit me, building on what Architect Ibrahim was saying, and I think sort of alluding to when he was talking about growing what we have. It's something that I'm very passionate about. How do we instead promote our agro biodiversity? Soya beans, fonio, cassava. Let's focus on these things that were natural to us, natural to our diets. What was God given, not what started coming and what the West started pushing on us for their own profit agenda. So let's go back to that. And if we go back to that, it will start addressing issues of climate vulnerability as well for our farmers. So I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. A few days ago, touching the last thing you said, about our agro biodiversity, I was talking to someone, a cousin of mine, and who was talking about potatoes, sweet potatoes, as part of urology of people from Ofa. And so meaning it's something that has been there forever, and yet we don't hear about it. While I was chairman at the chamber, one of the things I did bring on the table was that we eat local, where we would take gari, well packaged in a cup with kuli, boiled corn, things that members were producing. And guess what then? It was all the foreigners went for gari and kuli, sweet corn and co. So which is very crucial. You made mention on something also that I'm not saying that is really one of the reasons why, I reached out to the Agri Group and to the chamber is when I'm not seeing experts in either vice president's office or presidency or around the minister, because when state of emergency was declared, we heard availability was not the problem, it was affordability. But everybody in the sector knew that availability was the problem. And later, everything just keeps changing. Everything. And what you mentioned also, which the government needs to pay attention to, there's no synergy. The vice president's office and the presidency, there's no synergy happening. So it's crucial that, we've not spoken about this, but you're bringing it out. And every meeting I've gone for, this is the same thing. So it will be good for governments to look into this and for all of us to be able to, be conscious of this as we have conversations going forward. Let me go to Dr. Shola. Dr. Shola is a banker. However, the question I'm going to ask you has nothing to do with banking. It's privileged information about your background, your upbringing. I know you grew up on a river basin. I have spent the last 27 years operating in river basins across the country. And I saw when these things was good, but I know you saw when it was better. How was it like? How was farming or agriculture on river basins when you were growing up? You're muted.
So sorry. Thank you very much for having me, the Chamber African Farmer, the organizers. Well, you've touched on a very sentimental topic. Probably I'll just speak to that. My mother was, blessed memory, was a pioneer staff of the Niger River Basin Development Authority. And this was in the period when prime attention was paid to the development of the river bodies, across the 19 states at the time. And we had agronomists and engineers that were able to bring in what I would call expertise, to be able to really develop across the various projects, managing the water bodies, ensuring that irrigation is at its pristine sustainability, amongst others. And so we moved into the staff quarters of the river basin, I think when I was 10. And today I'm a graduate of agriculture, although I'm in the banking sector today, but all of my post-qualification experience had been in agri, all due to the fact that I was very influenced and properly stewed in the agri world. I do not think that I know any other world. And to compare what happened at the time, versus now, I would not want to use any unsavory words, but something happened to our agricultural sector. Some people will say, well, the system happened to it, and agri was not kind of immune from what had happened. But back in the days, the river basin did exactly what architect Kabir Ibrahim spoke to. There were 11 river basins covering the 19 states at the initial instance. And those river basins focused on the agro diversity, crops that they had in all of those states. In the Niger River Basin, we focused on rice in Ejiba, in Niger State at the time. There was also a lot of fish, in New Busa, Kainji, and the rest of the water bodies. But today, I think the mandate of the river basin has even been skewed in such a manner that it is no longer under the Ministry of Agriculture. I think it's been moved to the Ministry of Water Resources to just manage water bodies. Whatever they are doing there right now, I think is up to them for reasons best known to them. But I cannot keep my mind away from Baba Jide's analysis, and it's so insightful that 90% of what we actually have focused on today in agriculture goes to crop, out of those 4 major areas that he spoke to. And this is quite instructive because there was a Dutch research entity that came out with a study on Agri Finance in Nigeria. And I want to reel out their data. They had said that the Nigerian agriculture sector needs about $200 billion of financing, of funding. Out of these 200 billion, the Nigerian banks are able to contribute just about about 4 billion or thereabout, with an additional 15 billion, all of them in US, that are self-funded by the entrepreneurs. But when you talk about the contribution of funding or financing, apart from the ones that are injected by the entrepreneurs themselves, it is curious that the Nigerian banks still remain the biggest contributors to the agri sector. Now, that does not mean that they've done well. I mean, coming from a journey of sub 1% of their risk asset portfolio 10 years ago, I think that they are now at, that's the Nigerian banking sector, are now at about 5%, of their risk asset portfolio invested in agri. And this particular investment are actually roughly categorized into three. So you talk about the smallholder, farmers that will require short-term finance for input. You talk about the MSME that will need medium to long-term because many of them tend to add value and so they are in processing. Quite a number of them have also backward integrated, into direct production. And then you can then talk about the bigger guys, the large multinational companies who require pretty much short-term working capital. Now, for where we are going, from 200 billion, if you are able to net off about, say, 20 billion, you can see that the road is far. Question then is, why are Nigerian banks not as robust in financing agriculture as they will want to? The answer I will hasten to put in place is they are keen, they are eager. However, to a large extent, because of perspective, we will need to look at it from certain prisms. Access to information, access to markets, and then access to finance. I always believe that these are the three major things that you will need to engage. So we have a sector that is largely characterized by, should I say, informality. We have forever tried to build capacity. We have forever tried to manage knowledge in such a manner that best agronomic practices, best processing practices come into the hands of the players in such a way that structure will be very clear, road to market will be very clear. This is a structured way by which I would say formal institutions, banking institutions, tend to approach or engage the market, irrespective of the sector. And where that roadmap is not there, you see all of their risk management antenna, show up. But to put it in perspective, one would say that even the little that had been done in recent times, we see it bedeviled by what I would call an inefficient utilization of the produce. You had spoken to low productivity as a result of lack of capacity at some point, but one will speak to even the ones that are out there. How exactly are we able to make sure that they are preserved in such a manner that the cash conversion cycle, in other words, the funds that goes into them, including the 40% of wastage, how can we do it in such a manner that everything comes to value? And so it is not just about production, it is about examining the system that does not allow the preservation of what has been produced. And so I think it was Ada that spoke to infrastructure, logistics, and some of the things that will need to be done. That takes me to the role of government. The government will need to, food security for all intents and purposes is national security. There is no responsible government anywhere in the world that would fold its hands and say that the only role we are going to play as far as the agri sector is concerned is to regulate the sector. No, it goes beyond regulation to certain levels of intervention. So there are interventions to ensure that the market is stable. There are regulations to ensure that incentives that are meant to ensure sustainability, they are all there. But there are gaps in all of these regulations. While one has always known the schemes and programs of the government, around the credit risk guarantees, I think these things have been there since 1978. We have switched from that to stuff like the interventions that we have seen. I think the news is out there. It is still subject of assessment, of impact and all. But to a very large extent, we will need to zoom into how the government intervenes. My time is running out, but I quickly want to make a reference, because Ada is here, to what she said about her former principal, right? So there was a time we had a scheme that removed subsidy from the hands of the importers of a very crucial input and placed it right in the hands of the farmers. Why could we not sustain that? It worked. It worked. The banks participated. All of the banks, coordinated by the bankers committee, participated in that scheme. So when it comes to execution, implementation, and the sustainability of all of these measures, I think that one needs to look at it a little bit more. But again, I must underscore the fact that government needs to intervene. Finally, I think this is my first round of speaking. I will want to say that coordination of all interventions, programs, and schemes is very crucial. I sit in a position where I know that I have heard about what I would call all kinds of initiatives coming from all kinds of places. Very brilliant initiatives that I think will work if it is well coordinated. May I then subscribe to Ada's appellation? I love that word, war room, because that is the response we need now. Can we create a war room that can bring together all the agencies, departments, and parastatals of governments that have been saddled with regulation, with intervention, and then let them bring in value chain players, including financial institutions, and come up very quickly with what I would call low-hanging fruit solutions. Because as it is today, even though the declaration of the state of emergency on food security happened within the first 100 days of the government, it's nearly too late from what we are seeing today. So we need low-hanging fruit, very quick resolutions to first and foremost stem whatever is ongoing. Planting season for rainy season starts very shortly. I want to ask, because I know we have people on the table that probably will know, how exactly are we going to engage the rainy season with government programs and interventions? These are questions that I believe that we need to answer. But for us as banks, I think we have a couple of things that we will probably want to discuss because according to the theme, from crisis to prosperity, I'm certain that we will also be able to bring in a couple of suggestions, at least from our point of view. I think I'll stop there for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So you touched a lot of salient things, which is very crucial: coordination, intervention, and regulation. There, no synergy. I am of the opinion, and I stand to be corrected, that 8 months into so we did something in our organization, in agribusiness empowerment, the NGO component. about 3 or 4 months prior to the election, we dissected all the manifestos of all the leading candidates then. And it was a shock that we discovered that it was too watery for what was coming ahead. It was very clear that all of them, did not understand agribusiness, the value chain, and what was coming. The ruling party had some, more detailed conversations than others, but it was very clear that whoever became president based on those documents would be in this situation today. And so we are here by design, by the fact that there was food crisis, the leading aspirants did not know. And that's where we are today. So I would move to Samson before I go back to Jide. But before I do that, I just want you to be thinking about this. The Bankers Committee. How can we get the banks to unlock funding? The banks, Jide did an analysis on Channel some days ago, where the banks made some huge, they made declared profits and co, where the real sectors were going down, banks were making money. How can we unlock funding from Bankers Committee? Bankers Committee are republishing National Theatre, with some huge billions, when even then we knew there was going to be a crisis. So how can we unlock that funding is something I'll be asking you later. Samson, you've been around. Samson, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm here, sir.
Okay, Samson, you've been around for a while. You've pioneered projects, landmark projects. I was still with you yesterday. And you deal with a lot of youths. And you are someone that does not pancake issues. You give it as it is. How? Because we're not going anywhere without the youth engagement in agriculture. How can we engage youths from your experience to ensuring that we have sustainable either programs or projects that the youth will want to embrace? How can we do that?
All right. Thank you so much, sir. Good evening, all the daddies and mommies online. Thank you for the privilege to be here. How do we get youths to be engaged in agriculture? I think I would say it's simple. Right now, every young person wants to be an artist, either a musician, a comedian, a footballer, and all of that. And to the best of my knowledge, I have not seen any formal campaign or jingle where people are saying, come and become an artist, come and become a footballer. Instead, when those in the sector became successful, youth by default gravitated towards it. Same thing happened while I was growing up. I think then banking was the rave. Before then, I heard it was oil and gas. I remember they also told me back then that, oh, nobody wanted to be a pastor. But today, people are calling themselves before God calls them. Why? There is money. So the first thing is, can we see successful farmers? Till date, you still see even documents from UN, WHO, when they describe a farmer in Africa or in Nigeria, you see that poor, struggling looking person. And that is the picture the youth have of what a farmer should look like. And now you are telling them, hey, come into agriculture. What they hear is come into poverty. Because once in a while, I sit down to look at that. There was this document I got from National Bureau of Statistics, the 2019, but released 2020, on consumption pattern in Nigeria. And I was shocked to realize how much Nigerians spend on vegetables. Like, I can produce vegetables and be a billionaire if I produce and I can sell. So first things first is, can we actually start showing the right picture for young people when it comes to agriculture? Can we be intentional about the stories we tell? Can we be intentional about the images we portray? That is number one. Number two, can we be intentional about putting in a pathway? I'll give you an example. If I was studying medicine before I switched to biochem, but if I had studied my medicine, graduated and all of that, I do not need to work extra hard to succeed. How do I mean? I know that, oh, on graduation, next thing is go for housemanship. Next thing is NYSC. So there is already a clear path defined as long as I'm on that line. If I take a different course, maybe maybe not accounting, but chemistry and all of that, I know, oh, for my next level, get an MSc. For the next level, get a PhD. So there is a clearly defined pathway that as a young person, I just know that if I do A, B, C, D, I can almost guarantee the outcome. I may not be wealthy that I can afford whatever I want, but I will be far from poverty just by following the rules. In agri for young people, it is not like that. You don't even know what the rules are. You don't know whether what you plant today you can sell tomorrow. I was very glad when I think it was Madam Ada that talked about the whole insecurity issue. You are not sure if the farm you went to today you can come in tomorrow. You are not sure if you get there tomorrow what you are going to meet. So you realize for a young person, agriculture is a gamble, not a career. And we need to take it away from gambling to becoming a career. From my understanding of career, it is something that takes you from where you are to where you want to be. And for young people, where they want to be is where they have freedom, financial freedom. But agriculture is not like that. So let me explain when I say it's a gamble. If I go out tomorrow to buy a phone, I don't think I have the right to get to where the phone seller is and tell the phone seller, this is how much I want to buy the phone. No, it's the phone seller that gives me the price. When you come to agree, the farmer wants to buy inputs. The seller tells the farmers the price. It is time to sell your produce. The market is telling you the price they will buy it, which means the farmer is at the middle, getting prices from those they buy from and those they sell to. That is gambling, because you realize you don't even know whether you are farming for profit or you are just farming for a loss. So we need to now start looking at how do we create systems where the young person can actually plan by having what we call a price floor, the minimum a thing can be sold. Two, because over 90% of our production in agri comes from crop, can we have a metric system for selling things? We do that already in poultry. If you buy frozen food, you buy in kg. Can we have the same thing? That way, the farmers can plan. Number three, I'm glad you said that yesterday when you came, that you said it yesterday, which is we need to make agriculture beautiful. We need to make agriculture entice. Agriculture cannot just be about hoes and cutlass. Dr. Akinwumi said something, I think that was about last year. So when he said something, he said, hoes and cutlass are supposed to be in the museum. And for people to usually to really understand what that means, hoes and cutlass came out before virus that we use today. Hoes and cutlass came out with ink, this feather and ink for writing. But I took my time to research. So if I go to a bank today and I want to write and they give me feather and ink to write, how will I feel? But we still have interventions of hoe and cutlass being distributed. And we want to get something out of it. No. This is the era where young people have always wanted to be on their phone. Young people love technology. But yet, we are not, I'm not saying go and get a tractor that costs 10 billion naira to buy. No, but there are simple tools that can increase yield. There are simple tools that can bring in better predictability. There are simple tools that even if NIMET decides not to function properly, young people on their own have simple tools that they can access online to know what is the weather pattern, what is the rain pattern. And because of that, some of these young people can now start even acting as extension workers and providing that as a service, knowing that they can get paid in produce from the other farmers who are not so young, and it's a win-win for everybody. So we need to start creating such systems. And then finally, we need to go back to cluster farming. See, as much as we want to look at what Europe and the rest of the world is doing, I believe that we need to look at our reality. We are a country with a lot of people who are young and also jobless or underemployed. We need to start thinking of how can we creatively harness these people's, what is it called now, strength, energy, and intelligence? Cluster farming does that. We may not be able to say everybody go and take 100 hectares and go and farm. But we can say with technology, take 2 plots, take 3 plots, bring in the financial institution, bring in the market and say, okay, fine. We know this person is going to give us maybe not, okay, 100 kilo, maybe 5 tons of tomatoes in the next 4 months. Can we have a bank in a way that it is structured with the market? This young person is earning salary every month based on what he is supposed to get as yield. So if you are going to get 5 tons and you are selling your maybe 1 kg at 1,000 naira, that's about 5M. Let's put you on, even if it is 100,000 naira salary or 200,000 naira every month. So month 1 you get salary, but you are still producing. 2 months, 3. By month 4, when it is time to start selling, they now start deducting that salary out of what you are producing. That way, you are not planting and thinking of what am I going to eat, because you are sure that there is money coming in regularly. All I need to do is make this farm work so that I can pay back the debt. And with that, it's a win-win. It's not rocket science. In simple terms, if we need young people to do agri, we need to make it beautiful for them and create a future. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Years back when the Banj 1.org did an event, they were trying to launch in Nigeria. I had some, preliminary conversations with the founders then, and we were suggesting bring an artist into the agribusiness space. And that was when the Banj started the Cocoa Gari here. It's interesting to know that Bakassi studied agric engineering. The likes of Frank Donga studied agriculture. So like I was saying yesterday when I was with you, is we need to make it more appealing. It's not the size now. In India, it's 3 plots. The average farmer in Nigeria, local farmer, still has like 2 acres, 3 acres. So it's not in the size, it's the quality of input. Okay, so I go back to Jide, and we have to gradually start winding up because we'll take some questions from the audience. When it comes to food security and agriculture, discussing about agriculture, time always flies. But the crux of the program today is to be able to extract salient points that would be able to put together and ship and share with private sector, individuals, anybody planning to come into the sector so that we will be food secure in a short time, or we will reduce this pressure in a short time. Jide, you've heard what everybody has said, and everything starts and ends with data. For us to be food secure, what if you are to be with the president today in the presence of the Minister of Agriculture? What will you be telling them?
Okay, first is they'll have to pay for that information.
Definitely they have to pay. And I agree. Give them a tip of the iceberg that will make them want to come.
I'll share a tip of it and how important this is. And I'd like to share this in 3 points. The first point is you put together this discussion and you've created a theme called Nigeria Food Security Outlook 2024. Today, food is security.
Yes.
And so even though this program is called Nigeria Food Security Outlook 2024, it will not be wrong if this program had also been called Nigeria Food Outlook 2024. Just to emphasize how important food is. Food is now security. So it's actually Nigerian Food Outlook 2024. That's the first. I also will emphasize what Samson has said. what we have in Nigeria today, when we talk about agriculture, is more of we have agri-gamble, not agriculture. And that's a big point from Samson. It's actually more of the Nigeria's agri-gamble sector than Nigeria's agricultural sector.
We'll tweet it for you.
Please do. I also want to, in one breath, summarize what Dr. Shola and architect Kabiru have said. And for me, their summary is Nigeria's past, when it comes to agriculture, if we could taste it, Nigeria's past was sweet. Nigeria's present is bitter. And the outlook for Nigeria's agricultural future at the best case today is tasteless. So we have moved from a sweet past to a bitter present to a likely tasteless future. But if there's one thing that I feel strikes me the most, it's what my friend Ada of 3 decades said. And she said that in putting it in 4 words. She says, we are worse off. And a lot of people really don't understand what Ada means by saying we are worse off. And I would like to put that in context. And I would like you to listen very carefully to how worse off we are. In 1960, when Nigeria gained independence, agriculture's contribution to the size of our economy was 63%. And you might want to just write that down. Agriculture as at independence was 63% the size of the Nigerian economy. Now look at what happened 20 years after, 1980. Agriculture had dropped to 20%. What happened 2 decades again after 1980? I'm talking about the year 2000. It had only moved to 22% of the size of the economy. Again, what happened 2 decades after 2020? After year 2000, today agriculture is at 24%. The insight is, if we keep moving at this pace, Nigeria's agricultural concentration to the size of the economy will be back to 63% in the year 2064. In other words, Nigeria will be back to where it was in independence 100 years after independence. I don't think you understand it. As at independence, we were at 63%. Going by how we are moving today, we will get back to the level we were at independence in 2064. In other words, 100 years, a century after independence, Nigeria will be back to where it was at independence. 100 years after independence, we'll be back to where we were at independence. The sad thing is, looking at our life expectancy, looking at how things are, we are not likely the ones that will be anchoring and having these discussions in the year 2064. We will have given, a lot of us will have handed over to some other younger generations that will still be talking about Nigeria's agricultural challenge. Yes, I talked about not giving all this information for free. However, if the president or any of his advisors are listening, we've removed petrol, we've removed to a large extent the subsidy on petrol. We haven't totally eliminated it. We've removed subsidy on petrol, which was consumption. We now need to design an effective and high-impact subsidy program for Nigeria's agricultural sector. It wouldn't be a forever subsidy program, but one way to boost Nigeria's agricultural production now is, like I said, to design an effective, high-impact subsidy program for agricultural production. Different from the sort of schemes that the CBN had tried to do that seem to have the right thinking, but execution had a lot of complications. Nigeria's agricultural sector needs a lifeline. We're right now on life support.
Oh, sorry. Architect Abdul, sir, you have championed many associations. You understand the operations. Government does not. If in 3 months, if let's say the government is ready, and a crucial conversation that Ada did mention is understanding that they need help, because really currently right now, the government does not think they need help. If they accept they need help today and they reach out to you from your wealth of knowledge, how would you advise that they engage the association or the cooperatives that will cascade down to the rural farmers? Because that is needed like yesterday. What would you be advising them to be able to make food available across the regions that you spoke about in 4 months?
Thank you very much. And I think you are hitting the nail on the head. There are so many associations, and they will all have to be made to speak with one voice. Government has to bring them together and to harness all the good activities that they are doing and to marshal that into one envelope. And Nigeria should look at agriculture as 80% private sector and only 20% public sector. And that we have to look at agribusiness as the real incentive for agricultural productivity and prowess. We should have agribusiness incubation networks all over the country so that farmers or would-be farmers or the youth, as someone alluded, will not do agri-gamble. They would do agriculture to take care of their other needs and be able to become prosperous. Now, there are so many things happening in the agriculture space, so many interventions, so many efforts, so many windows for credit and all that. But several of the players are really working at cross purposes. And so much of what government is doing is not well coordinated. For good agricultural practice and for prosperity in agricultural productivity, we must use real education. Agriculture is beyond just doing something because you see somebody else doing. You need to have an understanding of all it entails in whatever competence you take, from start to finish, if you want it to be sustainable. So anything that anyone gets into, any competence in agriculture you get into, you must understand all the pros and cons. And if it is anything that has any deficit in knowledge, create distance from that. Allow the people who have knowledge to do it. There are so many players in the agricultural space that some of them are even degrading our cultivable and irrigable land. So many of the activities are even inimical to productivity. Government should not shy away from investing heavily in agriculture at this point. It may not be something that government needs to do for a very, very long time, all over the world. And in all the places that call themselves first world, and all the people who bask in achievements in agriculture, in agribusiness and all that. In the beginning, they made heavy investments. But these investments have to be real, and they have to be focused, and they have to be for God and for country.
Okay.
You should not have you should not have any semblance of corruption in matters of food. To put it very succinctly, sir, if you live in a neighborhood and that you are just there because you can afford it, none of them is your blood relation, and you have food, and your pot of soup smells better than everybody else's, and you are a very mean person, you are not calling anybody to come there, but you have children and they have friends. Children are gifted people. They are very nice people. They are from God. So they will invite the children of the neighbors that you don't even talk with. They come to your house to eat food. So it is in your larger interest to make sure that everybody in the neighborhood that you live in eats well for you to remain safe. Now, so if there's any action anybody takes, be it association, be it something you do because you are saddled with it as a government responsibility, you must do it with several others in mind. And in the matter of food, you must learn to be your brothers and sisters keeper. Okay. I remember Ada from her days with Adeshina, and I think I was then president of Poultry Association. And you know, one thing that I remember very well was that Dr. Adeshina was a very practical man. If you tell him that you are doing this, he would ask you what are the results we are getting. So we had this meeting. He was very friendly to me. I think I think he studied agricultural economics.
Yes.
And in poultry, the poultry business had a very fast asset conversion rate. And in fact, that's why as an architect, I got into poultry in the first instance. But the reason was I could multiply my assets. I could convert my assets very fast. I will explain to you. If you raise chicken for egg,
okay,
in a matter of 18 to 22 weeks, you will at least feed the birds and even smile to the bank. If you raise chicken for meat, in a matter of 6 weeks, you would even be smiling to the bank. But of course, there is a lot of bromide that goes with that territory. But that is to debunk the feeling or the expression of the young man who says young people are not properly incentivized to take on agriculture and make it a business. You can do it, but all these things that are itemized must be borne in mind. But this is not government.
Yeah.
This is private sector. The government has no business even doing all the things that it is doing in the name of support for agriculture. No, it is the enabling environment.
Okay, sir. I would get back to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Ada, you've been very active in processing, supply chain, value addition, also investments. I want to ask you a two-in-one question. Let's see how fast you can be able to deliver that. In terms of how would you advise individuals or corporates who are patriotic, who also want to invest in the sector to be able to impact the sector and make profit? How will you advise them to go about it? And also supply chain. How will you advise the SMEs today? Because many of them are shutting down. How will you advise they work on their supply chain vis-a-vis backward integration so that we can have food in a short period? Thank you.
Just very quickly, I would say tread carefully. We may have come over the last few years to tell you that agriculture might be sexy, it's beautiful, or whatever, and there's, arable land out there. We're importing this amount, $11 billion worth of food, so there's room for import substitution. So there's a business case, there's an investment case to be made, and young people can say, oh, let me do this, or a company can say, let me do this. But I feel, we need to tread carefully, because sometimes you go in without truly understanding the dynamics it takes to truly drive a profitable food business. Some people will spend all their time saying, oh, but my father has land now, or I have this land in my village, I can just go some plantain, or I can go cassava, not thinking about maybe the seedlings you're using, Samuel, you can speak to the fact that sometimes if you don't have the right seedlings, you can never get the yields that you require, and your investment can just disappear overnight. So it starts from research, it starts from your inputs, the quality of that, all the way to the value chain. So for me, when I say that value chain, they may end up being on the farm and saying they want to produce, and they don't even spend time to think about who's going to buy it. Or you have the people, the processors, or the people on the downstream side who will say, let me get into this food thing now. I can buy this equipment. Let me just go and process this gari, or let me just go and do this snack food, plantain chips. And then you later realize, but I can't source the raw materials. There are logistics issues. My farmer, one day they brought me the plantain. The next week, they said, the car broke down, or they stopped them on the road, or they didn't have lights, whatever. It's a complex thing. So I would say tread carefully. We have a lot of things to fix, and I just really want to touch on some of that. And engineer, architect Ibrahim has already started speaking on sort of the issue of government has to be involved. This intervention has to happen. We cannot do it as private sector. Honestly, I worked in policy in the Ag Ministry as a senior advisor on investments to Dr. Adeshino for 4 years. I saw it was possible for policy to work. I left and I started my own business. I said, let me roll up my sleeves and build in the fruit and vegetable value chain. And then things have happened to me as an entrepreneur that I say to myself, oh my gosh, I can't keep providing my own power. It doesn't make sense. I can't deal with people who don't get it, who haven't been trained properly. I can't deal with policies that are not conducive for business. So it all comes back to government. So they need to know that but private sector can do it if government gets it right. So we have this focus on government-enabled, private sector-driven agricultural transformation. That 10% of budget I was saying we should reach to, they may never be able to. There are competing needs. I mentioned there's healthcare needs, there are education needs, but you can get private sector money to come in with you. Leverage the money that's out there. Leverage money from donors. But do what you can do as a government. I can think of 3 things. 1, put policies in place, the right policies. 2, security. I can't say that. I can't emphasize it enough. And 3, infrastructure. We cannot do agriculture. We cannot industrialize our agriculture. We cannot talk about agro-processing. African farmer, you know this, without infrastructure. And that falls into logistics, it's cold chain, whatever, power. So back to this value chain approach, let us get it right. It has been done. I would like to say to any of our government officials or anyone close to them, it's okay to swallow pride. It is. We're in a crisis situation. This has been done before. Many people have referenced Dr. Akinwumi Adesina on this call today. If you look at your questions, you see so many people referencing him as well in terms of the trajectory we were on, be it in the use of data, being so focused on value chain driven agricultural transformation, being so focused on government enabled with the policies and letting the private sector do it. Dr. Shala was talking about the growth enhancement scheme, where we got out of the business of government giving fertilizer, and we ensured we use technology, we use the handsets and phones, and our farmers could get their fertilizer. They got their inputs on time for the planting season. Then we started dry season farming. There was just a focus on planning, on data, coordination. It has been done before. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Please, let's just go back, dust up those documents. I found all my ATA I was clearing out. I took a picture, I sent it to Dr. Adesina. I said, look at all this, our work. I found the ATA, the agricultural transformation, all our plans, beef transformation plan, fruit and vegetable transformation plan, fund for agricultural financing is there. They're still operating. Thank God we escrowed that money, or else they won't be there today. Thank God we put that money aside so that at least they could continue operating. We had it all. Lots of government money was spent on consultants. No need to. If a consultant comes into your office today in the ministry, please send them away, because we have the work there. It's there. Nigeria's money has already gone into paying them. Bring it out and let's just execute. Swallow our pride and let's just execute. Don't reinvent the wheel. That's what I'll just say. Don't reinvent the wheel. Thank
you. What you just said about not reinventing the wheel made me remember when I went to Ghana. I think that was 2012 or 2011. And I saw some types of maize. I went to the research institutes. The maize, QPU and quality protein maize, high in lysine, high in tryptophan, essential amino acids. And I was excited and I brought it to Nigeria. I went to meet my friends, my colleagues, and they all told me, I said, I brought something new. You guys are not working. I was really lashing them. So when I mentioned the name, they laughed and laughed me out. They now said, come. They took me to the seed bank, a federal institute, took me to the seed bank. I got into the seed bank, and lo and behold, they had completed their research almost 9 years ago, but it's lying fallow there. The beautiful thing about that corn is that it allows anything you rear for flesh, for meat, to get to market size 2 weeks before. I did it here. Everything we need is in the country, gathering dust somewhere. So, implementation is key. Dr. Shola, I'll come to you. If you can do this in 1 minute, 2 minutes, so that I can, take questions, it's very crucial. How do we get bankers committee? Because when bankers committee come together, the banks will comply. How do we get bankers committee to fund the value chain? And I mean the value chain of agriculture. If you can do it in like 2 minutes, that would be great.
Thank you, sir. So I think since you really confined me to a couple of minutes, I would just be very I mean, to understand our present, we need to go back to our future. I really love that word of not trying to reinvent the wheel. So let me start with the Bankers Committee, and then I will speak to a couple of projects. The Bankers Committee, there was a time in this country, and I think it was in the last, this is 2024, in the last 10 years or thereabout, that they came together and they decided to dedicate 5% of their PAT as seed capital for the program then that was known as the Agri and SMEs Investment Scheme. It came with a framework. That framework was eventually set aside in favor of applying that fund to be, from what I gathered, I may be wrong, the seed capital that saw to the establishment of the Niger Microfinance Bank today. And so they became the custodians of that. Within the period of this collation of funds, I'm not too sure if it was done twice, but over 200 billion was quickly on the table for them to be able to drive that. So we know that when there's a synergy of the committee, there will always be money on the table. You made reference to the National Theatre. Yeah, that was the Bankers Committee's modest contribution to entertainment. I mean, they could also do the same for Agri, I mean, for whatever it is worth. And for me, I would say that those data, you know, they speak a lot. But this was how it worked. Stakeholders were gathered into a room. There was a problem statement. We had a need assessment. The chairman of the Bankers Committee was always in every meeting. The heads of agri lending were always in every technical session, in such a manner that we co-created frameworks and guidelines that banks were comfortable, or let me say stakeholders generally, banks inclusive, were comfortable to run with. And that was how the GES ran. That was how a couple of other programs ran. Now, this was made possible due to the availability of data. So there was a collation of data. There was a cleaning of data. So there was data integrity. And banks were then able to, based on reliable information from the analytics, apply their funding into where they are. So the Bankers Committee will always be at the center of coordination when it comes to the farmers segment and the MSME. You know, I said that lending is roughly into three, right? The farmers, the MSMEs, and then the large corporate and the multinationals. Leave those ones, they operate fully under commercial terms, and I really do not think that we need government intervention there. But for these two categories, there must be that handshake that will bring up a framework that banks can buy into. And if it is coordinated at that level, then we know that every bank has a bite into it, and they will be tracked for performance. But again, that is just to answer the question very straight. Let me just wrap it up with this. It is possible for us to co-create products with policymakers, with the private sector, even with the chamber. The most important thing that I believe that banks need is visibility into the kind of business that you are inviting them to come and work with. That visibility will give a very clear explanation as to how they want to roll or how they will not be able to roll, and then we'll be able to identify risks, you know, mitigate the same, and everybody goes. But more importantly, and especially for where we are today, I believe that we have data that we can quickly leverage. There is a collateral registry. There is the farmers register. Billions of money was paid to, especially on that farmers register, to be able to collate it. I'm not too sure the last time that particular data was updated. But with sufficient data and analytics of what is needed and where, banks have enough expertise to sit with other stakeholders to co-create frameworks that can actually make sure that access becomes available. Secondly, or lastly, I would say, the financial inclusion program of the government is a hugely welcome one, because then it has enabled the mass market banking. With the agency banking solutions and services have actually reached the last mile. Banks will want to leverage on the last mile banker to be able to provide such valuable services to the farmers and the MSMEs at the last mile. Now, when this is done, and one is able to then leverage the data, or let me say the reach, then the capacity, the question of capacity becomes resolved, because we now have fledgling and robust fintechs and agro-tech companies that are doing a lot. They are really co-creating, innovating on very, very great products that banks can latch onto to ensure that their data is very much inside. They're able to keep track of their investments. And when it's time for payment and collections, the solutions are there, built on digital technology. And so for me, I think we have all of the ingredients on ground that we can actually bring together to cook this stew and make it ready ahead of the coming season. Coordination is the name of the game.
Thank you. I'm sure the chairman of Agri Group, Agri and Agro Island, will be excited with what you said about the co-creation of solutions, that would unlock funding. And I'm sure it will take you up on that. And I'm sure the chamber also will leverage that, because already the chamber has a good relationship with your bank. And I'm sure that in a very short time, they will get back to you. I would want to take something. I want to take some questions and, throw some to you. We have very short time. The time is never enough. But can I have, is the question, Mr. Sunday, do we have some? We have a lot of questions. Can you help me edit some out, and maybe you throw it out to me, or you read it out, because we have quite a bit and there's short time, and I still want to take a round of contributions before we close, even within the limited time.
Thank you, Africa Farmer. Thank you so much. We have about 25 questions. Some are comment questions. Maybe I should take them from here. Do I begin from the last one? There's one here from Kehinde Akintayo. He said we need to identify the low-hanging fruit of offering solution to the current scenario. Okay, that's a comment. I will skip the comment. Let me pick the questions. From Baba Femi Adejimi. Good evening. Please, who can actually provide food processing infrastructure, the government or the private sector? 2, do farmers young and old believe in farmers association? Because from my observation, farmers see themselves as an opportunity. I think he meant opportunity okay. To get money, to get free money.
Let's do this. You just go through the questions and be able to crop one or two. Ada, did you raise your hand? Okay, just look.
Yes, to
okay.
quickly start taking that first question on providing infrastructure. Who should do it? Should I just jump in?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the answer is both. Both government and private sector can provide the agro-processing infrastructure that we need. And I'll give you a tangible example. When we're in government, we started something called the staple crop processing zones. We said, okay, there are issues with infrastructure. How about we bring proper infrastructure to areas of high food production so that you're right next to the feedstock, but then you can have the processing facility that has all the power, the roads, all the things that you need. That idea has gone bigger in an African way because the minister took it to the African Development Bank, and today they are giving money to state government, to the government right now of Nigeria to implement staple crop pretty much SAPZ, Staple Agro Processing Zone. It's in two ways. You can either do it greenfield from scratch, where there's just bare land and you say, we're going to put all this infrastructure. And that needs a lot of money. That money typically would come from government or donor organizations like the African Development Bank, like the World Bank, to start it afresh. But what's also interesting is that you have some private sector agro-processors today that have invested heavily in setting up their factories. They have put the land, they have put the roads, they have put the lights. Some of them are powered with solar. They have security. They are doing it in a very efficient and professional way. So in those cases, some of them are open to renting out or leasing out spaces within these complexes, what they will call agro-industrial complexes, to lease it to others who want to maybe do the value chain of fruits or the value chain of processing rice, whatever. And that is private sector. So I feel like it's not either or. We are a country that is in need. We must leverage all the resources available to us. Thank you.
Thank you. I personally hold that opinion too, that is both. Most of the big organizations now, I would prefer to fund some backward integration value chain, so that, like, I know some time ago, the cassava processors, they were empowering people with modular processing plants so that they can take it off bringing cassava or bringing water to town to bringing cassava cake to the factories, and they were funding that. So it's crucial we pay attention to that. And one of the things I think government needs to really do now, and this is my opinion, the government needs to stop focusing or reduce the focus on people and pay attention to factories. Okay, if we focus on the factories, we will produce enough. We'll provide policies that will be stable, and the private sector will look to raise funding. So the people they are important, but also the factories are important. When we show the companies that policy will be stable and will respect policies, then they bring in more money. The more money and capacity they bring in, the better the sector grows, and we'll be able to feed each other. So that's crucial. Mr. Sunday, do we have, could there be a policy statement in Nigeria that would enforce National Youth Service Corps members to engage in a serious mechanized farming throughout the period of service? Okay, so saying, can we ensure that NYSC corps members focus on agriculture? I think it's in Israel that almost everybody goes into military, but there's a huge need in Nigeria. We need teachers, we need, agropreneurs, but everybody can get involved in part-time farming or part-time agriculture, as the case may be. So we don't have like specific questions, but somebody here is asking about how to get youths involved. I'll just share 1 minute. I started in what we call Form 1, JS1. I started buying day-old chicks, rear it for 3 weeks, sell it again, and gradually, before I finished secondary school, I had over 100 rabbits, over 100 guinea pigs, over 100 poultry. I had 600 heaps of cassava, 400 heaps of yams on my dad's farm. The Imperial Majesty, Oni of Ife, was a classmate, was a colleague. And, so we don't need government to start, but we need government to sustain this thing vis-a-vis policy. And I believe during the president's inaugural speech, he did say that he would make policy stable. And I think we should hold him on that conversation. Stability of policy is very, very crucial. So, well, we're out of time. We can't finish the conversation. Somebody else says that the outlook shared by Mr. Augustin is scary. what is the way out so that the youths who are the future of tomorrow will want to invest in agri? Most of the youths can't even invest in agri with the price of farming fields right now, but they can collaborate. They can collaborate. Many people are running away from the farms, and it's scary how people now want you to just take up their farms. Yesterday, I got 4 offers. Just run it. Run it. We're not interested in it again, but we don't want to sell. Just come and run it. And that's where, you know, the unlocking funding comes in. So can we just take 1 minute, you know, parting comments from everybody? Let me start from Samson. Parting comment: if President Tinubu and the Minister of Agriculture, Honorable Baja, who I believe is pivotal to food security in Nigeria as the Chief of Staff, if Honorable Baja is here, you know, and you're speaking to private sector, what will be your parting comments? Samson.
Yeah, thank you. I think comment is simple. We must ensure that food production is not seasonal because hunger is not seasonal. If I can add 2 more statements to that, I remember the story of Jesus in the Bible where he was under a fig tree and hungry, and he cursed the tree because it had no fruit. What's funny to me is to remember that that was not the season for it to bear fruit, yet it, which means it is a cost to produce seasonally. So if as a nation we must strive towards success, seasonal production because it is rainy season, we need to stop it. If not, the future is bleak. Thank you.
Thank you. Architect Kabir. Architect Kabir, are you there? Okay. Ada?
I believe I've said it all, but let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just get it done. The answers are there, the people are there, we're available to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Shola?
Okay, so bank and non-bank financial institutions have capital that can be allocated to salvage this cost and to actually take it on a sustainable basis. But the coordination is needed to harness every stakeholder to ensure that this is done in a timely manner. You don't come up with a framework without necessarily carrying the stakeholders along. I think that has been from time to time missing. So we await this conversation that will co-create products that will unlock access to finance from banks and non-bank financial institutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Architect Kabir?
Yes, I thank you immensely for the insights that we got in this conversation. I'd like to say that the president, you know, I think waged a war on food insecurity. And I want the same war to be waged on general insecurity, because that is a threat factor to food security. So the same emergency on food security should be extended to insecurity in the land, so that the farmers can produce assiduously, can go to their farms at will, and we will farm the year round.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Jide?
All right, thank you. I'll perhaps end with what a wise man once said. He said that there are only 3 things that can kill a farmer. Number 1, lightning. Number 2, being rolled over by a tractor. And number 3, doing business and doing farming in Nigeria. And so the government needs to know that it has to make doing business and doing farming in Nigeria much easier, easier. And we need to put metrics on this. We need to be able to measure the ease of doing farming. We've talked a lot about the ease of doing business in Nigeria. We now need to talk a lot more about the ease of doing farming in Nigeria. And that's because crop production is Nigeria's largest economic sector. You heard me right. Not oil, not gas, nothing else. There's no sector in Nigeria that is larger than crop production. So if we do not get crop production right, we will not get Nigeria right.
Thank you, Jide. Based on what you said, everything the livestock eats, cattle, sheep, goat, poultry, is 100% crops. So if we don't get the crops right, we will not be livestock secure. Every developed nation that is livestock secure, they are all corn secure. All of them. Russia-Ukraine war, bottom line is corn. Corn security is real security. I want to say a huge thank you to everyone. First, to the people who logged on from the beginning. To date, we still have about 141 still on board, which means that this is very crucial. A big thank you to Ada, Architect Kabir, Dr. Shola, Samson, and Jide, because this was just less than 15 days and the patriotic component in you kicked in, and you are all very busy professionals that, at least I know, I've been trying to get Jide almost 2 years now. But when it was national assignment, Jide showed up. And I've not spoken to Ada in a while. So I want to say a big thank you for logging on. A big thank you to the Agri chairman, Mr. Kola Aderibigbe, dynamic man. I'm sure you'll be taking many of these things up to the Director General, who is ever dynamic, ever ready, with a large heart for the group, and the President of the Chamber, who is, okay, let me mind my words now. I want to, let me be open, who is crazy about SME. You know, if DNA is SME, and Nigeria is in a good position because we have people like that in higher authority. I know quite a number of politicians or policymakers are here. The summary of what has been said today will be collated and shared with everybody who is on the platform, shared with government, and put in public domain so that the handlers of the presidency and the handlers of Mr. President and the Minister of Agriculture can have access, so they know what to do and also know the kind of resources in terms of capacity that they need, so they don't reinvent the wheel. So thank you so much for being here. Mr. Sunday, is there anything I'm missing out?
Not exactly so. Thank you so much once again. You've done the vote of thanks, so my job is done. Just for us to wrap up by having our national anthem as our custom is here at the chamber.
Thank you all. God bless you. We'll keep the flag rolling. God bless Nigeria. See you soon. From the Agri group, more programs will be rolled out in a short time. God bless and have a sound rest.